Thank you. You did a great job introducing it. I think I agree with you 1,000%. There's been a lot of talk today that talked at you guys, and I think if it's okay with everybody, I would love this to be an ongoing Q&A because we're going to talk to Tresor today, who is. We'll get into who you are and what your experience is because it's quite a treat to have her here today. But I don't have the right answers. I'll spoil that right away because the right answer isn't the right answer for everybody. So I'm super interested to see one, who's in the room. Just very quickly for me, who's a brand in the room? Who represents brands? Who's a brand? Cool. Anyone? Sweet. And who is there? Any publishers? Is there anyone that's from publishing? Sweet. Cool. I hope this is relevant to you guys. If anything, we can steer it more into a discussion around the future of publishing, if you will. So I'll start. Before I introduce you, I'll just tell you a little bit what Linkby is. So Linkby, I come from, I live in Australia, where I'm the co-founder of Linkby, together with Chris. Chris started the biggest youth publishing platform in Australian history. So he started a publisher, he ran a publisher for 15 years, and then he sold that to the biggest TV network in the world, in Australia. And throughout being a publisher, we realized there's some things that could be better. Not only better for the publisher, but also better for brands. So we help brands work with the biggest publishers on the globe. We're here in Singapore now. We're in the US, the UK, and in Australia, where we allow brands to work with these publishers. And the differentiator and the disruptor, if you will, is that you can do that on a performance basis, a true performance basis, which makes, if you're a brand, you can create a quick brief, you set your timings, your budgets, you choose your publishers, and then those publishers will then write, and this is where it gets different, a dedicated piece of content about what your brand is about. And then the kicker to it is that the only time there's a cost incurred is when the audience engages with the content to the level where they click through from the links in the content into the brand site. So in a short sense, you can weaponize premium content to build brands, build trust, and drive ROI, which is kind of how it changes. So that's enough of that. We also have Tresor here today, who not only comes from a rich background of finance and banking background, but also started and ran the Tresor Collective, but now is the COO of Huntstreet. And I'll let you talk about what it is, but if you don't know what Huntstreet is, you should definitely check it out. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your experience around your insight into what is the challenge when it comes to building a brand from scratch, which you have done.
So thanks for that segue, Adrian. So definitely very happy to be here. So I'm Tresor. I'm actually currently the COO for Huntstreet in Singapore. And a little bit about sort of my background into being an entrepreneur. So I consider myself fairly late bloomer in my entrepreneurial journey, having spent over 17 years in the banking industry. But if there's anything I realize, one can never be too old or too young to start something. And so I'm really thankful for the opportunity to be able to do something which I've always been very interested in, and that's luxury resale. So I'm the COO for Huntstreet in Singapore. So while we may be new here, we've only just launched here in 2021. But the company was actually founded by my two very dynamic partners, Sabrina Joseph and Janice Renata, back in Jakarta in 2015. And we've actually now grown to become one of the biggest luxury resale marketplaces in the country. And we're really glad to be able to sort of expand our operations into Singapore, and hopefully, other cities will come in the near future.
Yeah, and I've discovered Huntstreet myself now through you, and I think one of the big differentiators that you do, and this is going to lead somewhere, is that you do things a little bit different. It's not just dresses and handbags, even though you do that obviously both night and day. You also do things like kids wear and jewelry, where we get into that as well, but where there's a lot to be said, because it's not a quick purchase, as you will. You can't necessarily just do ads and then hope that people will, spend all their money. You need to educate the audience, and tell me if I'm wrong. And I think that goes for a lot of brands, where if you are in a remotely competitive segment, how do you stick out? And there's obviously channels that do that already. Traditional PR is one, and we can start there, I think. And please, again, if you have any opinion, if you think I'm talking, if I'm not saying if what I'm saying is not true, please intervene. We have a microphone, or just speak up, and then I'd love to hear if you think I am incorrect or not. But there are challenges with traditional PR. I know you have worked with publishers like Siren and Tatler, great PR coverage. But and then in getting that and the cost around that, the measurability around that, and also when it comes down to the bottom line, driving ROI from that, would you be mind speaking a little bit on your experience on what that was like?
So definitely, I mean, for us, Huntstreet, as an emerging brand, as a small business owner myself, I know how challenging it is to make sure that every dollar that we spend on marketing gives us the maximum ROI.
Sure.
And coming from sort of that traditional marketing, which was what I really focused on during my banking days, and banking being a very conservative industry, we were still very much focused on the traditional media, such as ad placements in the media, major dailies, TV channels and stuff like that, if you will. But sort of hopping onto the other spectrum, now running an e-commerce digital platform, specifically touching luxury resale, where luxury is still very much a visual-based business. And so naturally, it was important for us to understand who our target client is.
Yes.
And pivot our our marketing efforts accordingly. So for Huntstreet, we focus a lot on digital marketing channels, obviously social media channels like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, but TikTok,
of course,
are definitely key channels for us.
Definitely.
But on that spectrum, because we are not a mass market brand, the barrier to entry when buying into luxury is fairly high. So, and when we look at our clientele, the way to convince, I think, clients to buy into luxury, there is the element of trust. But how do you build trust with a client? You don't really just do that through a photo.
Exactly.
Just placing visual ads, display ads on all these channels. It doesn't necessarily work that way.
And tell me if I'm wrong, when it comes to luxury, especially, the trust has never been more important when it comes to, making sure that the goods are of the highest quality and really building that perception of so the environment. What I'm getting at is the environment matters. There is a difference between being on an ad next to your uncle's cats on Facebook versus being in Elle, Marie Claire, in Vogue, and the likes of that on a global scale. So so when you got that coverage from the PR you got, one thing I noticed was that it was not so much product focused, more about you and Sabrina and the founders of the business. So what we do and what we help brands do is to marry that with the performance, because if you are on Facebook, Google, TikTok, it is performance driven, it's bottom of the marketing funnel focused. Yeah. But then if you look at traditional PR, it's on the opposite end, it's on the very top of the marketing funnel. So what we're trying to do is to take that money that a lot of brands are spending on performance in those performance driven environments, but allowing them to do so within those premium environments and growing brands where the trust is already established. If you go to Elle and Marie Claire, I keep using them as an example because it's relevant here, they have spent millions of dollars in years building up a trust with their audience. And when you work with content, it's not you. Oh, there we go. Thanks. So that was loud. Sorry about that. Yeah. So what was I saying? So I think especially for the luxury section, but really for any brand, it's a competitive market out there. There are millions, almost billions, probably millions of brands that are all social brands that pop up like mushrooms. They spend all their advertising dollars in performance channels. But this is a leading question, how do you make sure that you graduate from being a social brand, which is, a varying quality, if you will, to become a brand that's part of the zeitgeist, or that utilizes those moments of trust that then publishers do and people seek them out for, and that's where PR comes in. But again, I think where we're getting at is the challenge with that is also the measurability, because as we discussed before we got on, is that for you guys are bootstrapped with Huntstreet. Everybody's bottom line matters, and doing long tail campaigns with publishers is usually reserved for blue chip clients that have endless budgets and they build a long conversion cycle. But in those other channels where 80 cents per every marketing dollar is spent with platforms like Facebook and Google, So what we wanted to do with Linkby is to make sure that you can get what you're getting in those channels in terms of the scale, the flexibility, and the measurability, because that's what it comes down to. Does this actually work for my brand? And I think that's how we have challenged a little bit the PR space, where there's still room for PR, where you can get those founder pieces. But if you didn't have any call to action, a CTA in mind, which usually is come and buy our stuff or sign up to something or download something, then the power is infusing those two worlds together, building the awareness, leveraging the trust, and then pushing it all the way down to that conversion, because we got to keep the lights on somehow. And I think that's the power of performance-led content. That was more of a statement than a question, but
it's a very long statement.
yeah.
I mean, I definitely agree to a certain degree with
Yes.
what you say. I think it really depends on, I think, the nature of your business.
Correct.
To consider sort of, do you really just go with the display ads format, and then really just flood the market with your marketing budget on just really getting people to know your brand or know your product, versus are you in the business of creating content?
Yes.
Telling your story, your brand, your product through, the long form format. So I think for Huntstreet specifically, and this is really where I can comment. So for Huntstreet specifically, as I've said, because we are in the business of luxury resale.
Yes.
And in luxury, trust is paramount to what we do. Because obviously people are parting with tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to get something from you.
100%.
So when we look at, what is it that we're trying to sell, and how best do we sell that, and why should you buy from us? And besides the economic benefits of sort of buying resale per se, obviously, very often you get it cheaper than retail. But that we realize is not the only sort of qualifying entry to why someone would buy resale, but really they also look at the environmental impact, because it really is more conscious for the environment to buy resale. You avoid sort of having too much land waste, too much waste going to the landfill.
Absolutely.
But sometimes, with sort of pre-owned pieces, there are also things that tells a story, right? And so when we look at sort of how do we want to hit our target clientele through our marketing strategies, we always divide it into sort of two broad categories. If it's a pure sale campaign, I think the traditional methods of really just creating display ads, putting it on Facebook, putting it on YouTube, putting it on TikTok works well for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if we're trying to sort of educate people, really about why do buying into luxury make more than just economic sense, there's actually investment value. So the investment value of buying into luxury is actually something that we talk very often. And it's a type of content that you can't just communicate through a photo. You can't really also communicate it through short reels, which is really what we're seeing in terms of, where a lot of brands are putting their effort into digital marketing, which is really telling a story in 30 seconds or 60 seconds or less. But there are some content that can't be told in just 60 seconds. So, and that's where we really look at working with the right partners, like publishers, to do long form content interview, about either the history of the brand, the investment value of buying into something, vice versa.
Yeah.
So we really look at sort of what is the story that we're trying to tell, what is the best way to tell it, and who do we work with to maximize the spend. Obviously, like you said, whether you're bootstrapped or not, every company has a finite marketing budget. I think one of the things I've realized, I think COVID-19 has resulted in people staying at home or working from home more, and therefore resulted in a huge increase in online traffic. So what does this mean? Obviously now brands are now relying a lot on digital traffic to do their marketing. Likewise in, Huntstreet, it's no stranger to that as well. Advertisers, I think, because are focusing more effort on digital marketing, they become also very cognizant of how should they spend their, how should they divide their pool, right?
Sure.
Do I just sort of, burn through my cash and just run ads, hoping that will give me a certain ROI, or am I better off working with publishers that can give me a more qualified, trusted content, if you will? So exactly. I think in advertising terms, we call it native ads, in the form of like a paid advertorial. Obviously, who doesn't want sort of that PR coverage, right?
Yeah.
But that, I think, depending on the brand, doesn't come very often. So if you don't have the opportunity to sort of get your story, get your content heard through third-party endorsements, like your magazines, the big dailies, your national broadcasters, I think native ads are always sort of a good consideration for any brand to look at.
So my argument there would be that building the trust, every brand is a big fan of themselves. You know what I mean? Everybody has something to say, but then as a brand, utilizing a trusted voice that again has spent years building up a trust with an audience, having them say it for you weighs heavier than a brand saying it on those performance channels. And I totally agree that there is no solution that would eliminate all types of ad spend. So the idea what we're talking about, what I'm referring to is a new tool in the toolbox for marketers that allows you to have the same intent as you do in those performance channels, while also having the same intent that you have when you turn to PR and doing it both at the same time. So building the trust, building the awareness through the trusted voice of a publisher. But again, I keep repeating it, but also having one foot firmly planted in conversions, just like you would in the performance channels. And what we at Linkby has noticed is that when you start doing that as a brand, if you're a brand in fashion, beauty, any type of brand, you are in a competitive set and you are in performance channels, of course. But what happens when a brand then starts working with us and gets coverage from, I should use other examples than Mary Claire, Vogue, and Elle, Forbes, Daily Mail, InStyle, all these other publishers that we work with globally. What starts happening for these brands, which with the feedback we get all the time, is that then that trust transfers into the performance channels, which means when you get retargeted on Facebook, on TikTok, wherever else, you are not only that TikTok brand, that Facebook brand that you keep seeing there, you are that brand that your 5 different favorite publishers are all excited about, has all told you about. So then those other channels start firing more as well. I think the Australian expression is probably an international expression, which is the tide lifts all ships. So you can weaponize that trust that you're getting from all these different publishers with this dedicated content, while again focusing on ROI and hopefully achieving an ROI that's positive, and then building a brand, getting expertly created content from all over the world from these premium publishers, and drive ROI at the same time. So I know we haven't done work together yet, but I'm super excited to show you what we can do, because one of the things that, back to the PR stuff, and when you get content, it's great. It might be one this year and one next year, but the way the brands use our platform is that whatever they got going on, they use the platforms, they use the publishers, to tell that story for them. So I know we discussed key dates, for example. So you do activity around Christmas creations, you do content around, or you activate around Valentine's Day. Is that correct?
Yes.
And there was one more, which I forgot. There was a third one that you.
So I think for us, because we're in the nature of resale, so it's very important to also sort of plan our sale campaigns, appropriately and way in advance. I mean, obviously, us sort of more as a luxury brand, we don't do discounts because our offering itself is already has that economic benefits. You're paying cheaper than retail for most of the items. But what we do, obviously, I think, especially in markets like Singapore, Asia, who doesn't love a discount, right? So we do tap on that major sale calendar, if you will, in Asia. I mean, in the US, obviously, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Cyber Monday are the biggest sale campaign for any brands, any retailers. I think in Asia, I think your 66, 77, 8899, those are big sale campaigns that you really see a lot of. I think more of the mass market brands that do it. I think for us at Huntstreet, we tend to do it a little bit differently. We try to sort of limit our sale campaigns to no more than once tops a quarter. But we rather focus our effort, when we communicate sort of a particular curation, it's around seasons. So Valentine's Day gifting, that's definitely something that we focus on. Christmas gifting. So what we try to do is we try to educate our user base, our community. When you buy into luxury, when you buy resale, it doesn't mean it's always used. Pre-owned can also be brand new. We often face, women especially, buyer's remorse. You buy something and you regret. And so that's where a resale platform like Huntstreet can come in, help you declutter and, monetize some of the things that you already, invest in. So we do a lot of very sort of thought out curation throughout the year through such curations, and we push content around it. But we don't just necessarily, here there's a sale, shop our Christmas curation, for example.
Exactly.
What we try to do is then work with different content creators. So not just publishers, but also because of the nature of our business, we rely a lot on influencers. And these would be Instagram influencers, TikTok influencers that we have seen, if you work with the right one, can give you really good ROI. And you can actually track. So we work with influencers to create content, storytell, about the gifting experience. When they want to shop for something, they can actually shop with Huntstreet. So those are the things that we look at when it comes to digital marketing, not just but with publishers, I think we like to explore concepts like listicles. We always think that's very interesting because certain campaigns, you'll know that users are always searching for something. They want to know what is the best places for me to get something right now.
That's a big driver for our brands as well, listicles.
So we love to sort of work with the right publishers that is known for their recommendations, be it places to eat, places to visit, places to shop.
Sure.
So those are sort of the different activities, the activation that we would do, around sale campaigns, if you will.
Yeah. I think, tell me if this is relatable, because we work with a lot of brands that do similar things, especially Black Friday, Cyber Monday, which is the biggest online sale event in the world. And they do all this amazing work internally. They get ready for this big day, and it comes and there's very little action because every other brand under the sun is doing the same thing.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So that's where those placements in those curated listicles all over influencers as well. But for us, obviously, it's around the publishers and then getting advantageous placements in them. And a little look under the hood is that for publishers, they love CPC. There's obviously CPA as well, which is cost per acquisition. But CPC, again, is publisher-centric in the way that we let them do what they do, which is talk to their audience and influence their audience up to the point where they end up in the brand's environment. Then it's up to the brand whether they convert or not. They shouldn't be penalized for a poor site experience on that side. So when it comes to these key events, one big part of what we do, and I'm talking all the key events, we help these brands that work with us stick out of the noise and therefore see very, very advantageous ROI, because that's where the focus of shoppers go, because they turn to their favorite publishers for recommendations, because the size of the sales are intimidating because there's everything going on. So they get these curated listicles and dedicated articles where they motivate why they should pay attention to that specific sale. Just want to take a small break to see if there's anyone who has any questions or anything that we've said that you disagree with or agree with. Anything like that? No? Cool. One thing I wanted to talk about as well is going global. So I think that's the biggest feather in Linkby's hat. Like I mentioned, we are from Australia, but our biggest market is the US, the UK, here now in Singapore, and then Canada as well, with more markets to come. And you are in the UK and you sell to the UK and you sell to the US and you ship there. Is that correct?
So we do, we obviously cover international market because we're in the e-commerce space, but sort of expanding and doing fulfillment to international markets like US, Europe, definitely it's one of our key priorities right now. But I mean, obviously, it's you're competing not just with other regional brands that are all expanding into the same market. Everyone's focusing on, the West, right? Because of the size of the market.
Yes.
But you're not just competing with other regional brands, but you're competing with the local and well-established global brands that, originates from those markets. So I think definitely it's important for us to look at what are the right opportunities. Again, when you're a bootstrap company or if you have limited budget to work with, you have to be very cognizant about how you spend every dollar.
100%. So for Huntstreet, when you want to get content coverage from an InStyle or from a Mary Claire US or someone like that, what would the process look like for you now to achieve that?
So for us, obviously, we're not there yet.
Right.
In terms of we haven't, really looked at PR or digital marketing with such premium titles, if you will. We do have our in-house marketing team, but I think we tend to really look at, how do we grow and scale our business appropriately at the right time? I think when we want to do global regional expansion, we always look at what are some of the small wins that we can do first.
Mhm.
Right? Digital marketing, I think it's very easy, especially these kind of self-service platform that everyone is so familiar with. I love that brands not like ourselves, we can now sort of activate our campaigns on our own without the need to having to go through human intermediaries,
Mhm.
to place ads and look at the performance. But beyond ads, I think it would be great if we can get sort of that third-party endorsements to the likes of Harper's Bazaar,
Exactly.
Vogue,
Yes.
InStyle, Forbes, and stuff like that. Who doesn't want to, right? But how do we get there if we don't have
I'll
someone
tell you.
actively, if we don't have someone actively pitching for us on the ground
Yes.
there? I guess
that used to be the case, right?
Yeah.
You would need an agency on the ground. You would need to
your
actually
own
go
team,
there 100%. And now the idea is that with our platform, it's as equally easy to create a campaign for these publishers in all those markets as it is for your local Singapore market. It is literally a push of a button. And then you have a direct link into the editorial team of those publishers that you all mentioned, including everyone that those you just mentioned. And then those specific editorial teams then create the content, because that's something that we're very passionate about. Like, there's a lot of PR out there where you regurgitate a press release and you try to shoehorn it in to fit a tone of voice. But from my years and years of experience in the industry, the best results for everyone involved, the brand, the publisher, and most importantly, the reader of that content, is when you let a publisher do what they do, which is to talk to their audience in the way that that audience seeks out that specific publisher. So not only does Linkby allow you to do that on a global scale very easily without having the necessity of boots on the ground, the bandwidth internally, you don't have to write the content, you just provide whatever information it should be based on. And then individually, and all these publishers that you choose to work with will then create content that is expertly curated for their specific audience, pepper it with links. And again, the only time there's a charge for someone like Huntstreet is when their audience is so engaged with that content that they voluntarily leave their favorite publisher site and go into Huntstreet itself, wherever you want to drive them. So I can't, 2 minutes left. So do me a favor. I know someone must have a question, someone must have a comment, and we can throw these microphone around. So if anything else, how fun is that? So any comments, any questions from anyone? Yes, let's do it. Can we get a microphone over there? I can't throw that far.
Who was it? Just little one. Okay, hello.
Hi.
So much of the talk today has been about content that are relatable, authentic,
Yes.
real stories from real people.
Correct.
So since Linkby is working with publishers, how can you then ensure that these content are as captivating and as engaging?
I love that question. Thank you so much for asking the question. I really appreciate it. So so it comes down to the metrics of how the platform works. So we work with the publishers. We create these relationships. We work with them on a one-to-one basis, so you don't have to. Then the incentive for them here is to unlock the CPC, the cost per click. That only happens when the content is engaging. So unlike a regurgitated press release, which they copy and paste because they have no financial incentive to do so, and frankly, brands should be paying. Just like you can't call Mark Zuckerberg and ask him for free Facebook coverage. It is weird that you can call a business like a publisher to do that the same thing. So here we incentivize them. You only make money, the publisher, you being the publisher, if the content is so engaging and so expertly curated that people, again, do something publishers normally don't like to do, which is drive people off site. Obviously, they want people to stay on site and stay and watch more ads and so forth. So here, you, the brand, in this example, have the power to say to the publisher, hey, show me what you can do here. Show me how you can write about my brand and engage your audience so much that they voluntarily leave your site and come into mine. If you don't succeed doing that, we won't even pay you. That is a very good motivator for the publisher to put their best foot forward and to do exactly what you said, create engaging and authentic content for that specific audience. So if on brief, you choose to work with Daily Mail and you choose to work with Elle and you choose to work with InStyle, there are 3 different tones of voice. There are 3 different ways of talking to their audience. From one brief, you can get 3 different articles that, again, putting the publisher's foot forward to say, we're going to do our very best. Because they do all the work up front as well. So they invest that, and then if they don't do a good job, they don't end up getting remunerated. But if they do a good job, that brand will come back again and again when they release a new product, when they want to reach a new audience, when there's a key event going on, when they're pushing towards sustainability. Anything they're doing, they're going to come back to that audience, because not only are they using this premium channel to educate an audience, they're also seeing, again, return on the back of that as well.
So I definitely love that, Adrian. If I can just comment, because I think so often, brands are sort of at the mercy of publishers or the publications that they pay advertising dollar with.
Yes.
And, we used to, before sort of the performance-based metrics came in, the publishers would set, okay, this is how much it would cost for you to advertise on my platform. Full page, full color ad.
I used to sell that stuff.
Oh, by column.
It's a lucrative business.
Yeah, and there really was very little way we could, and then, once you put the ad, you could only sit back and hope that, the sales would convert.
Indeed.
So it's interesting to sort of now see that the publishers themselves are sort of now trying to justify the rates that they charge.
Yes.
And they can actually show that, okay, advertise with me and I guarantee you'll get this much conversion. So I think this is definitely moving in the right direction for brands or anyone who advertises. So definitely, something that we will want to look into as well.
Yes. Yeah. I see a red timer over there. Am I allowed to do one more question, team?
Yep. So, is there any last question? Yes, you'll be the last one.
Oh, my man.
For this session. Yeah.
Just a quick question, actually.
Please.
When you talk about CPC,
yes,
it cannot go. There should be a conversion ratio towards the CPC, right?
Correct.
And there should be an ROI.
Correct.
Because you're talking about CPC. So, in your experience, how good is your ROI?
It varies, is the answer. It depends on the brand. It depends on the story of the brand. It depends on the publisher they choose to work with. So it's nothing guaranteed. But the idea is, even if you get an even ROI, as in if you pay us and you make as much money back, you now have a license to print premium awareness, which your competition doesn't. So you can build the trust, build awareness to whatever scale you want. But does it happen that the ROI goes absolutely through the roof because audiences that click through come with context? They're already sold into what you're doing and how you are doing whatever you're doing. Yes. Have there been examples where we sold out a whole warehouse from one article? Yes. Does it happen every time? No. But having that platform to experiment, try publishers, and through the CPC, sifting through their whole audiences to find whatever audience you're after, aka people that are so engaged and click through, that's a powerful tool. Final note, as if anyone is interested, we're in the other room, we're here tomorrow as well. There's an exclusive offer at the moment for anyone here. Just email us, me or Jeff, my Singapore head, and just say that you were a DigimarCon. We will provide you with free creative services. I know creating briefs and guessing what a publisher wants to see can sometimes be a treacherous path to walk. We also provide that service for free for anyone who's attended this event. So if you're slightly curious, which I love, curiosity is everything, let us know and we can show you what it is, how it works, grill us. We love questions, obviously. And then if it's right, I would encourage you to give it a try and use it as a way to monetize content and trust to build a brand and drive ROI at the same time.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Tresor, for coming.
Thank you. No,
Yeah.
thank you.
And thank you, audience, for sticking up. And thank you for the great questions. That's amazing. And thank you for the event. That's it. Over. Done.
Yes, thank you very much.